She's a rich, entitled white lady. She's the pampered, obnoxious ski bunny in the matching snowsuit who tells you to pull up your mask while you're standing in the lift line at Jackson Hole.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been accused of something terrible by Tucker Carlson. That's right, he called her a white woman, and he used it as an insult. And of course, AOC is a proud Latina, and that makes her non-white, that makes her a woman of colour. And it's interesting that Tucker Carlson has used it as an insult, and AOC has taken it as an insult. And it must tell you a lot about the times we're living in, how things have changed. And once upon a time, minorities would have tried to pass for white. They would try to adopt white identity because of the privileges it would bring. And now, women like AOC, who might be considered white in some contexts, are saying, oh, no, not me, I'm anything but white. I mean, what does white mean? In America, on the census, in the category of race, you have black, white, Native American, Asian and Pacific Islander, and a couple of other categories. But when it comes to categorizing Hispanic people, i.e. the Spanish-speaking communities that come from Mexico, that come from Puerto Rico, where I believe AOC originates from, they can be considered Hispanic in terms of language, but they could be black Hispanic or they could be white Hispanic. And of those two ends of the spectrum, I would say AOC is much closer to being a white Hispanic than she is a black Hispanic. So in some senses, is she white? And the concept of race goes back to the idea of the Caucasian race, which is a now disproven theory that Caucasian people, white Europeans and northern Western Asians originated from the Caucasus Mountains. So technically, Caucasian people would include white Europeans, people from India, Afghanistan, Iran, right through into North Africa. All these races, all these ethnicities would be considered Caucasian and therefore, in some sense, white. And even people from the Middle East and North Africa, Arabic-speaking people and other ethnicities from that region would have originally, and until this day, are considered white in terms of the census. And there's even been a campaign for Middle East and North African to be recognised as a distinct ethnic group, because when the original immigrants arrived from these regions in America, because the majority of them were Christian, they assimilated into white society and they tried to become white passing, which is a lot easier if you're a Christian in a majority Christian country than it is if you're a Muslim. Now the majority of immigrants from these countries are from a Muslim background and they feel they are not being recognised for what they are as non-white people, as people of colour. And the term people of colour is quite an interesting one anyway, and there's been question even over the issue of Oriental people, East Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans. Do they count as people of colour? Because they don't somehow fit the typical profile of what is expected of a person of colour, they're somehow not seen as part of that category. So is AOC white? Is she a person of colour? I think it depends very much who you ask. If she went to Cuba, which is a majority black country in the Caribbean with a white Spanish-speaking minority, she'd probably be considered white. If she came to a majority Northern European country, and maybe even in parts of America, she wouldn't be considered white because she's not a white Anglo-Saxon. She's a Latina. She probably has Southern European ancestry and some Native American, Amerindian or Mestizo ethnicity as well. So yes, she is a person of colour, but in some senses she's also white. Sorry to offend you, AOC.